Nolan, a skilled diver with several undersea adventures under his belt, had always been drawn to the mysteries of the deep blue. On a group expedition off the Californian coast, the team came across the shadowy outline of an aircraft hidden beneath the waves. The excitement of discovery soon turned to dread as they ventured inside the eerie, aquatic tomb. What they encountered inside made their blood run cold. But before we start, smash the like button and make sure to subscribe if you haven't, and hit that notification bell so that you won't miss any new stories. Nolan had always loved diving. Living his entire life near the sea, getting his PADI was like getting his driver's license. Both were equally important in his day-to-day life. Getting that certificate eventually ensured him of his job and allowed him to dive anywhere in the world. During one of their routing expeditions to check the reefs and the state of the area's biodiversity. Though it had been part of Nolan's job, he always loved diving near the California coast. They had gone here many times before. However, it seemed like something significant had changed, as they had never seen this before. Under the water, especially so far under, there was no way to communicate with his colleagues audibly, and with the sight before them, there simply weren't enough pre-discussed signs to explain what they were seeing. The insides of Nolan screamed for him to go closer to research the foreign structure, but before they could do that, they had to make sure that was the wisest course of action. They had to ensure everyone's safety first. As the crew's safety was the most important to Nolan's supervisor, he gestured for them to start their venture back to the surface. Luckily, their professionalism took them to the surface without, seemingly, any issue. When Nolan and his colleagues resurfaced, they all spat out their regulators. After hearing their story, the captain made a quick call, which hopefully would give Nolan and his team the information that they would need during their exploration. The team waited with anticipation for the Coast Guard to return with information. When the Coast Guard returned the call, Nolan was waiting in anticipation. He tried to read the captain's face, but his expression remained stoic. He could only hear a few sounds of agreement. When the man placed the phone back and turned his attention back to the divers in his crew, he gave Nolan's supervisor, James, a nod. The plane dates back several years, if not decades. It had been said that it had simply disappeared. The Coast Guard is unsure how it came to be on the Californian coast. But as long as we report back our findings, we are free to explore and study the object, the captain said. Nolan was giddy with excitement, but he had no clue what was actually waiting for him on the ocean's floor. In the early morning light, Nolan's team laid out their dive gear with ritual precision on the deck. As they began their descent, the azure blanket of the Pacific slowly darkened to an indigo abyss. Each breath Nolan took was a meditative step into history's depth, the plane's lore heavy in his mind. The first sight of the aircraft's silhouette against the sparse light from above struck the team like a chord. Circling the wreckage, the divers methodically surveyed the sight. Nolan and Irene, poised at the aircraft's broken doorway, exchanged a glance that carried the weight of their task. The divers swam through the cabin, their lights casting long shadows behind the floating debris of lives interrupted. Amidst the silent cacophony of motionless chaos, they found personal belongings, wallets, jewelry, writing utensils, all preserved in the cold saline like relics of a time capsule. The stillness was poignant, interrupted only by the sound of their own breathing apparatus. The team couldn't help but be drawn to the artifacts that floated around them, evoking the era when the plane had last seen the sky. Handbags and hats pinned in 40s fashion, a child's doll with glassy eyes, newspapers with faded headlines discussing the stirrings of a world at war. Back on the surface, the air was thick with conversation. The discovery of the sealed door was significant. It turned their dive from a recovery to a potentially historic exploration. They knew the next steps they took could rewrite a chapter of history or close it forever. The crackling radio signal cut through the maritime air as Nolan relayed their coordinates and findings to the Coast Guard. The sun began its descent as a sleek, gray vessel approached. cutting through the calm sea with authoritative speed. Its arrival was unexpected and unannounced, causing a stir among Nolan's team. The so-called insurance recovery team aboard communicated via radio, requesting information on the plane's location. Nolan, wary of the vessel's timely appearance and smooth facade, signaled his team to stay alert. Tensions escalated as the new arrivals hailed Nolan's team again, this time asking to board their ship for a routine check. Yet, they balked at providing proper credentials or specifying which insurer they represented. Their vague explanations and evasive answers led to heightened suspicion among the divers. Nolan, taking charge, instructed his team to secure the research and findings. "No one boards this ship without clear authorization," he declared over the radio. His firm stance made it clear that they would not relinquish control of the discovery or compromise the site's integrity. The mysterious crew's insistence only intensified the urgency of the situation, casting a dark cloud over the otherwise clear maritime skies. As night enveloped the sea, the so-called recovery vessel hovered like an uneasy shadow. Their vessel's floodlights cast long shadows underwater, betraying a clandestine activity unsettlingly close to the aircraft's resting place. The diver's presence, ghostly and unwelcome, was a stark reminder that the depths held a lure for many, not all with pure intentions. His voice crackled through the radio, issuing a stern warning to the shadowy figures below to surface and identify themselves. But the only response was the muffled dance of their dive lights against the dark water. Dawn cast a gentle light on the Pacific as the suspicious vessel lifted its anchor, its silhouette retreating into the horizon. Questions clung to the air like the lingering night mist. Had they found something in their nocturnal probing, or were they scared off by the team's vigilance? The radio crackled to life with the voice of the Coast Guard, cutting through the morning's tension with words they had been waiting for. Permission granted. The clearance to investigate further was not just procedural. It was a green light into the unknown. Nolan felt the weight of new responsibilities settle on his shoulders. This next dive wasn't just an exploration. It was a step into a bigger world of geopolitical and historical webs, where each thread was as delicate as it was dangerous. With the sun overhead casting beams into the blue, the dive team stepped off their boat into the embrace of the ocean. Descending back into the twilight zone of the deep, Nolan led the team, their bubbles trailing behind them like ascending ghosts. The compartment door, resistant at first, gave way under the combined effort of the team, revealing its hidden contents. The compartment was a snapshot of an era thought to be long dissolved in the saltwater cradle of the ocean. The artifact, a small, intricate mechanism of unknown use, was cradled in Irene's hands, her gloves guarding it from the present as she swam toward the ascent line. Nolan watched, knowing that its true value was not in its material, but in the story it held within. Methodically, the team collected everything that could be moved without damaging the integrity of the site. Once surfaced, the stark brightness on deck was a stark contrast to the shadowy depths. The artifacts, now sprawled on the table, seemed alien to the open air. Nolan watched as the team, with a mix of exhilaration and fatigue, pored over the soggy documents and the enigmatic artifact, attempting to dry them without causing damage. It didn't take long for the pieces to start fitting together. A manifest listed not just passenger names, but cryptic cargo entries. And the documents, maps and orders smeared with the seal of officialdom but never recorded in public archives. The implications of their find were immense. Each document was a thread pulling at the edges of a long-sealed truth. The plane, they realized, was no mere missing craft. It was a vessel for secrets that bore the weight of nations. Cargo lists corresponded with missing government inventory, and some passengers had ties to intelligence communities. Government officials arrived with the evening tide, their badges of authority and nondescript suits standing out against the backdrop of the marine tableau. They listened, took notes, and then took everything. With professionalism and quiet insistence, the officials emphasized the sensitivity of the discovery. Nolan and his crew were thanked for their service to historical truth and then promptly sworn to silence with the weight of duty and patriotism. In the aftermath, as the officials departed with the day's find, Nolan and his team sat in the waning light, the thrill of discovery tempered by a solemnity that had not been there the day before. They were part of something larger than the sum of their careers, yet the fullness of their role might never be acknowledged. They shared looks that conveyed the unspeakable: pride, curiosity, concern, and a lingering sense of loss. The ocean had given up its secret, but at what cost to history and to them? They had uncovered a truth that might never see the light of day.